So Yves Missi has been fantastic. We've been able to see that all year. And I think some people are having some revisionist history and a recency bias around Jacoby Walter's excellence this year. Now, it would be naive of me to say that he wasn't in a slump going into that Kansas game. Yeah, I mean, he was. And I'm sure Scott Drew would have told you that as well. I'm sure Jacoby Walter would have told you that. These things happen. But I think it's important to look at Jacoby's whole season because it's been pretty darn good. And not just these last few games. Now, before the Kansas game, which he does get in double figures again, he has 17 in the game. He hadn't made 2 or more field goals in the game in his last 4. He had to go all the way back to the Texas game. And so that game on Saturday, that's big for him. I think it just put him back over 15 points a game, and is still a guy who is thrown in the top 10 of these NBA mock drafts, as a guy who came in with a bunch of hype coming into the season as a 4-star, 5-star who was projected to potentially be as high as 3 in the NBA draft, with some people talking about number 1. But he's still solidly in that top 10. And I mean, he is still an elite shooter and a 3-and-D guy in the NBA. I mean, with his length, he is, and his athleticism too, to be fair to him, is very switchable. And from what we've seen in his more than half a season at Baylor, is he's very coachable as well. Something I've talked about during his slump is even when he's not putting the ball in the basket at the clip that he maybe should be, he is doing a lot of other things really well. His defense has improved. He rebounds the ball. He gets to the free throw line. So that shows me, because that's not things that high school players, top high school prospects, are really worried about. But he comes to Baylor, and even when the shot hasn't been going in as much, he is staying in the starting lineup because he's doing all of those things. And I think it's important to remember that he's not just those 3 or 4 games between Texas and Kansas. And it was nice to see him get back off the schneid against KU on Saturday. I hope that his confidence doesn't dip with that final missed 3. I mean, that's a guy I love having taken the shot, and it was open. So Baylor had a couple good looks at the basket at the end of that game. I can't fault them for taking either of those shots. Now, going back into the advanced stats via Basketball Reference, so he's about 15 per game, but per 40 minutes, he's averaging 19. So that tells me 2 things. A, that's still good. Both of those numbers are good. But it shows that his kind of volume scoring isn't what it was at the beginning of the season. Meaning, if he plays 30 minutes, and he's averaging 15 a game, his per 40 would be, 21, 22 instead of 19. So it's a small difference. It really is. I wouldn't worry too much about it. And then I love looking at these offensive, defensive ratings in the per 100. And his is a 125 offensive rating, which is really good, and 104 defensive rating. So if you heard the first segment, neither of those are quite as good as Yves Missi, but I'm here to tell you that's still pretty good to be plus 21 net rating as a freshman, as a true freshman. Like that those are solid numbers. Are they as good as Yves Missi's? No. Does he disrupt as much defensively as Yves Missi? No, but he does some other things that Yves can't do. In fact, he's way above Yves, which is interesting because I don't know how they calculate this. In win shares, he's 6th in the Big 12 in win shares and 6th in free throws, which I put in there because it does show that he gets to the free throw line. And if you watch the NBA, the best scorers get to the line a lot. If I have Rockets fans who are watching and listening, you remember it from a few years ago with James Harden. He got to scoring titles basically through the free throw line. So that is a good skill to have. It is absolutely a good skill to have, drawing fouls. And Jacoby Walter is good at that. Now, his true shooting percentage, which I take over regular shooting percentage much more as canon, is 55%, which is pretty solid, especially for a guy who's shooting a lot of threes. And I wanted to compare that to someone on the team right now that you all are familiar with. And I'm going to compare him with Jalen Bridges, who is a decent shooter. Good. I think Jacoby Walter's a better shooter. Jacoby's more athletic and probably creates his own shot a little bit better. Jalen Bridges finishes around the rim a little bit better, but you know what I mean? Like Jalen Bridges is not projected to be an NBA lottery pick, or was he a 5-star guy or anything like that, but a good player. His true shooting percentage is 59%. So that shows me, maybe that could be a little bit better on Jacoby's end. Maybe it could be, but his teammates still have a ton of confidence in him. Ray J. Dennis said if you gave him that shot at the end of the game 10 times, he's hitting it 8 or 9 of those times. They see it in practice every day. And in fact, this is what Ray J had to say about the slump that Jacoby is going through.
He acts older and is a lot more mature than his actual age. So I knew he's gonna come out the slump. Slump is what you want to call it. Everybody's going to miss shots. It's basketball. It's a game of mistakes. But, as good as he is, as talented as he is, and as mentally strong as he is, we knew he's going to be fine. And going forward, he'll be even better.
So clearly the confidence in him is still there. And, Ray J said a slump, if you want to call it that. I think it's fair to call it a slump. I think Jacoby would call it as well. But clearly, there's still a vote of confidence in him from his teammates and from his coaches. And I'll say this, if you're one of those people who's just into the recency bias here, I've got news for you. Probably every team in the Big 12, maybe sans Kansas, and most teams in the country would trade one of their starters to have Jacoby Walter in their starting 5 right now. Bar none. No doubt about it. They would absolutely take that in a heartbeat. And I'm glad we have it. So with the slump, does he go down to a B+? Maybe. Bounce back. I'm going to put him at an A- when I look at the full body of work. And if it's a B+, that ain't that bad either. And when he starts getting hot again, boy, just look out. Okay? Just look out, everybody else.